chose for today was really how we could leverage AI along with automation to make a scalable, intelligent operations. Automation is nothing new. It's been talked about for the last decade. But as AI is maturing, now we can really create enterprise-wide, scalable, intelligent operations. But before we dive deep into the discussion with our esteemed panelists, let me start introducing myself a little bit on EXL before I pass on to the panelists, and then we will start our discussion. EXL, most of you would know or you would have read about. We are targeting $1.6 billion of revenue this year, with a market cap anywhere between $5 to $6 billion, depending on how the stocks are sort of trending. EXL is known for being data-led. What we bring to the table is the power of data with analytics, digital, and human in the loop, because human is required to ensure that the customer experience is never impacted. We have been sort of pivoting EXL as the whole landscape of technology, customer expectation has been evolving. We started as a pure play operations management organization, but we quickly realized that the analytics is going to be extremely important. We built that as a practice. And as automation and AI became extremely important in the last 5 to 7 years, we have heavily invested on AI, digital, and data capabilities, which is what is powering our growth now. The presenter, Sumit Taneja, been with EXL for 21 and a half years. So I've seen all the journey, how we have pivoted over the years. And my current charter is to lead the digital consulting and implementation practice. Let me start introducing the panel, but let me pass on, and it's best that we hear from our panelists. Maybe Rob, if you could start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Amit. Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Chavez. I run the process improvement and automation desk at American Modern Insurance Group. American Modern is a wholly owned subsidiary of Munich Re, a large global reinsurance conglomerate that is vertically integrating by purchasing some P&C properties downstream. We've been in the automation and AI space now for about 6 years. Our practice continues to thrive and grow. We, as Sumit mentioned, use a combination of automation, AI, and the human in the loop. As a matter of fact, EXL provides us a lot of the human manpower through contracts that we have with them in India and soon in Cape Town. And so we are in effect combining both bots, onshore staff and offshore staff together with AI technology for to provide value for our customers. That's it on my side.
All right. Can we go to Malcolm?
Hi, Sumit. Hi, everyone. My name is Malcolm Ross. I'm the Senior Vice President of Product Strategy for Appian Corporation. So Appian is a technology vendor who builds end-to-end process automation solutions, a software platform for end-to-end process automation, incorporating AI, bots, and a strategic partner of EXL here as well. And a little background myself, I've been with Appian for 18 and a half years now, so been in the process automation space for that time, and then before that with another vendor in the software provider space for another 6 years, so about 24 years in just software development tools for process automation. So thank you so much for having me.
All right, thanks, Malcolm. Raghav?
Thanks, Sumit. Firstly, Rob, Malcolm, thank you for taking the time today morning and sharing your insights. Hopefully this will be an interesting session. Very quickly, my name is Raghav Maheshwari. At EXL, I sit within the insurance business team and am responsible for leading the P&L for commercial insurance, specialty insurance, and the InsurTech business segment. Quick background, I've been in the insurance industry for almost two decades now, 10 years with a carrier named AIG, and before that, 10 years in management consulting. Back to you, Sumit.
All right. Before we dive deeper into the topic and get some insights from our panelists, I thought it's important that we lay a little bit of context on how we have seen this intelligent automation sort of evolving. I still remember this was back in 2015, 2016. We were working with a utilities provider. We had created our first bot, first automation of one of the tasks, and we had gone to present them in Manchester in the UK. It was a large group. We presented. They really loved what they had seen. But then one of their senior execs sort of walked across one of our colleagues' laptop and says, "But where is the bot? I want to see the bot." And we said, "It's not a bot as you see in sort of manufacturing industries. It's really a software a bot." But as that was very early days of robotic process automation, as we evolved, for the same client, we deployed 200 odd bots. But there was a very interesting scenario we had where we started to look at more holistic automation. So we had a process where the meter reads has to be inputted into SAP, and that was being done by like hundreds of people. And we said we could easily automate it. But when we realized that we could even go it better, we were getting about 40% efficiency. We created an analytics model which almost automated 95% of the process. So when we combined analytics and process automation, we got extremely much better ROI. And that got us thinking. That was a time when we started to think that, look, if we have to automate, we have to look at a process more holistically, end to end. What are we trying to achieve? So we could combine many other things to get the best outcome. The third pivotal point, I think, in the automation journey we saw was the advent of AI and machine learning. Again, there are two examples we had. So typically when we started doing all these automations, a lot of work typically comes on email, and human will sort of extract that data and give it to the bot. We said, why can't AI extract that data from the email and then give it to the sort of bot to automate? But then we went a step further. We said this was a claims process in insurance, and this was a commercial claims. We said, let's look at this process holistically. There is data which is coming on emails. Let's use AI to extract that information. We have to take actions on what data we have extracted. Let's use a orchestration engine or a low-code platform like Appian, create a workflow, and then we could do the last mile automation either through an API or through RPA. So our complete thought process sort of evolved over the years as technology became much more available, much more accurate. And today where we sit, we are all sort of in the last 6 months have been jolted with what's happening on the generative AI. I'm sure this will be another pivotal where how we look at scalable, intelligent operations, it will be a very, very different use cases. And we've already deployed for one of our Australian insurers where claims inquiries are being sort of using generative AI capabilities. But I will take a pause here because I think some of these terminologies can mean different things to different people. And I'll probably go to Rob, to you, just to get a better definition on how you think about scalable, intelligent operations, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, thanks. So interestingly enough, we have spent the last, I would say, 18 months developing scalable capabilities exactly along the lines of what you just mentioned. And as a matter of fact, we're doing it on Appian. I was remiss. I should have mentioned the fact that we're also a large customer of Appian. we use Appian to sort of tie a lot of our disparate systems together and provide the workflow. So Appian for us is not necessarily the system of record, but it's the system of work. And we've spent time developing exactly what you mean. So when an insurer, what you'd mentioned, so when an insured sends us an email asking us to make a change in their policy, let's say they want to change the credit card that they use to pay their bill on a regular basis, that used to be handled by one of our customer service attendants. That no longer is the case. We've moved that over to really a stack of automation, different technologies working together, where Appian receives the inbound email, reads the email, understands what the requirement is, and then hands over to an RPA bot. We use Blue Prism. Use a combination of Blue Prism and Python to do some of this work. That goes into our back office system. We use Guidewire, changes all the credit card information in our payment systems, hands it back. The robot then hands it back to Appian. Appian then types out a letter saying your request has been completed. And sends an email back to the customer with very little customer interaction, and it works very well. There are some cases where the process can't be completed in its entirety. Our yield is about 98% on average, first pass yield, but in some cases it fails for some technical reason. And so in that case, then an exception, technical exception is thrown, and Appian then hands that exception over to our EXL partners in India to complete the process. And so what we've seen in the last few years, I would say probably especially 3 years through today, is automation taking on an ever more complex set of interactions between different applications, different business processes, to generate a holistic solution in the service of our customers. In terms of scalability, what that gives us is the ability to very quickly deliver assets to the business that they didn't necessarily have before. I'll give you one last example real quick, and then I'll hand it back to you. But many insurance companies today are scrambling to take rate because of weather conditions and fast changing climate in different states. We're constantly worried about not only rate, but also can we lessen our exposure when we see a cat coming in. And so the business needs to be able to scale quickly when those kind of changes happen, in either environmental or economic. And our automation department has provided that. We're now able to, for instance, restrict binding countrywide within a matter of hours, which is something that used to take us literally days to do in the past. We now do it with a combination of RPA bots. So it's been a very good tool for the business that has allowed the employees that we have to take on higher mind share type work that provide greater value for our customer.
All right. Thanks, Rob, for insights. Sure. Malcolm, let me go to you. We know that AI has come a long way in the last few years, and especially in the last few months, a lot of talk about generative AI. But as a product strategy expert, how are you thinking of that being as part of the overall end-to-end orchestration or automation with Appian?
Yeah, we're in an interesting phase in automation. Over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of focus on RPA and now a focus on AI. And what we see as a macro trend is a lot of focus on technology-driven approaches for automation right now, which is actually a little different I actually started my career back in the early mid 90s working on TQM projects for customer call centers in the credit card industry, IDEON, Safeguard Services. And, back then, process automation was very methodology driven first. It came out of the Kaizen approach of Japanese auto manufacturing in the early 80s into the United States, evolved into TQM led by the US Navy, which evolved into ISO 9000 initiatives and Six Sigma initiatives, if you remember these. So while in the past it's been very methodology, philosophy driven, now it's very technology driven. And I think that's a root cause of just the amount of digitization we have across our enterprises now. It's so easy to apply technology to solve solutions. And AI is one of those great opportunities to do this. But we encourage our customers to not see the shiny object for which generative AI is. It will absolutely save you countless hours and time in generating solutions and automating systems, but don't, always see the forest for the trees, as they say. It's important to have a perspective of end-to-end process automation to know the full customer journey, to know the full product lifecycle journey, to get that higher level perspective, because it's going to save you time on knowing where to apply automation properly, and also knowing what actual efficiencies and customer journeys you're actually experiencing. So we're deep in AI, deep in applying AI in our process orchestrations, highly encourage it, but we focus much more on that holistic view of process automation. And we encourage, and you think about that scalability of intelligent operations, again, it's don't focus on the leaves and the trees and the shiny objects today. Think about the whole ecosystem. Put yourself in the perspective of a customer, walk that path, and then see where to apply AI to save those benefits and save time and efficiency in your overall process.
All right. Thanks, Malcolm. No, I think we totally agree. I think a process or business-led transformation or automation is the right way to go. But everybody gets excited with stuff coming on, and with ChatGPT, everybody wants to know how can we leverage. And to be fair, every board is asking that question, so it's understandable. But let me go to Rob. Rob, we know that with leveraging some of these technologies, even when we are clear about the outcomes we are going to get, there will be challenges. There will be areas on to do things differently. But what kind of challenges and pain points you have seen when you're trying to scale some of these capabilities for better process design or automation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it's very much on point that Malcolm brought up the interaction between methodologies such as Lean and Six Sigma together with automation. Our group is actually made up of a combination of Lean, Six Sigma black belts, and automation analysts. And we do that because we've come to understand that automation by itself just allows us to do poor work faster, right? Poor processes faster, which is not bad. It's just also not great. So we really front load our engagements on automation engagement with some consulting on the front end by our black belts to really lean out the process first, and then we automate the lean out process. To that end, what I will tell you is we tend to face two big challenges. The first one is undoubtedly culture. They say that culture eats process for breakfast, and I tend to agree. We have to go at a pace that is right for for all of our customers. And I think of customers both internally being my colleagues that we serve, and also our external customers being our insureds. And so we have to be mindful of the internal culture that we have. Some groups are more accepting of automation than others. It's funny, you talked about somebody asking you to see the bots. I had that same experience not too long ago, a few years ago, when the people, some of our staff members were asking where the bots were. And there's this continued fear that the bots are coming to take everyone's jobs. And so we have to be careful of that and understand the internal stakeholder kind of view of automation. We've been lucky that American Modern is growing quite fast. We've had double-digit growth over the last few years, and so automation has not, in fact, the bots haven't come for anybody's jobs yet. We hope that they never will. What they've done is allowed them to take on higher mind share roles and or activities, and sort of the more mundane work is being done by the bots. And so culture is definitely the first challenge. The second challenge is data. Data is key for a lot of this stuff. I'll give you a good example. And since you brought up ChatGPT earlier on, one of the things that we've gotten very good at lately is ingesting information. So inbound email is something that I think we've developed a good competency in. What we haven't gotten very good at yet is writing text and making it outbound, customer facing. And yeah, we have technologies like ChatGPT, but for things like forms development and product manuals and whatnot, they have to be very specific to our products. And because American Modern is a specialized insurance firm, we tend to take the risk that other companies may not necessarily want to take directly. We're very specialized in that sense. And so the text that we develop has to be highly specialized as well. And so things like ChatGPT might not necessarily be a good option for that. And so we have to go out and either look internally to some of our old product manuals and digitize them and feed them to our AI engines, or also look externally into ISO forms and whatnot for language examples. And making sure that that data is clean and usable is a challenge. So I would say those are the two things that we face off on a regular basis.
Yep. No, thanks, Rob. And just to your point, I think one of the things we have learned, because the space is developing very fast on generative AI, there are many more large language models which could be leveraged and used for, and there's some models are better for some use cases, some models are better for different use cases. So now there are 15 odd open source models which can be used and deployed within a client environment rather than using sort of public APIs as well. Mm. So that's something which is still developing area. But let me, Raghav, go to you to share your experience from the different use cases you have seen and what you think really sort of works in this space.
Sure, Sumit. I mean, I would say, even though I've been at EXL only for the last 15 months, I think the team has had an opportunity to work with some very interesting use cases throughout the insurance value chain, and especially in underwriting, claims, and even finance. What comes to mind is a client story in underwriting, and I'll probably touch on that. To contextualize for this group, this is a leading specialty carrier with operations in over 100 countries globally. And they've been in a growth mode for the last 3 years. So they've seen a significant increase in the volume of submission activity as they're expanding their footprint globally, and therefore, consequently, a significant increase in the volume of data that they're having to look at. And we were looking at roughly 10 lines of business, including marine, aerospace, energy, cyber, property. As we sat down with the CEO and the head of business to actually understand what was their core problem, right? It boiled down to 3 things. First, they wanted to understand how can we optimize the data analysis work that was being done by the underwriters as they were sifting through an enormous amount of data and spending an inordinate amount of time on that. Second was how to mature the underwriting process whereby it can become largely automated, purely based on coverage and pricing. Obviously, for large and complex risks, there is need for complexity reviews, but for most of the traditional risks, how much can you kind of leverage straight through? And third, and I think Rob touched on this, in an environment like today, everyone wants the ability to dynamically monitor their portfolios and the ability to adjust. So how do you, from a linear underwriting process, shift to a sort of a non-linear underwriting process and give that flexibility where you can pass on that intelligence back to the loop? I think there were three things that we did, and this is not just a use case which is conceptualized, this is in production as being used today. So we did three things as part of our data-led approach. One, we developed AI algorithms to analyze a large amount of both structured and unstructured data, which include looking at historical claims data, policyholder information, external data sources. We looked at extracting roughly 40 fields, such as insureds, risk covereds, limits of liabilities, premium. So we extracted a large amount of data. And we then leveraged automation to collect and organize the data, then to run the algorithms and generate risk scores in real time. So that was literally the step one of how we looked at the problem. Second is we used our AI-powered NLP techniques to analyze policy documents and extract relevant information from policy documents as well, right? So we use that to actually understand policy terms, conditions, exclusions, which essentially facilitated the understanding or assessment of the policy itself. And last is we applied what we call rule-based automation. So we leveraged automation to essentially implement rule-based systems that automatically processed applications, checked for policy compliance, and flagged any discrepancies that came up. By automating all these rule-based decisions, underwriters could therefore shift a substantial amount of their time into paying attention on what I would call complex and large risks. I think what was interesting was the three clear outcomes that came across. And the first one, I think, is table stakes. So immediately, we were able to showcase almost a 40% improvement in terms of efficiency, right? Which is kind of. But the second and third are the more interesting ones. Second was that we were able to increase the speed to market for underwriters by as much as 60%. Because underwriters were leveraging a combination of the NLP models, which were AI-backed, and also automation in the workflow, they were able to process and sift through submissions in a much faster manner, and we saw a 60% increase in that. And last, and probably the most less talked about item, leveraging consistent data. So I think single version of the truth is a very bastardized term. I think the key is to make sure that you have consistent data that you're leveraging across each of the underwriters to analyze and basically generate insights. So you can use those insights to monitor the portfolio and then feed that back into the underwriting process as a continuous loop. And I think the good news is we started as a pilot in one product line. This is now expanded to all other product lines as well. Pass it back to you, Sumit.
All right, thanks, Raghav. Malcolm, let me come to you. I know we spoke about more on a process-led side, but I'm sure you, as a product strategy, you would be looking at, there are points where you will want to have AI embedded within the platform, within the Appian ecosystem. So how are you thinking about it? What are your sort of areas? Is this governed by feedback you are getting from the people using it? Or how are you thinking about it? Because I know we don't want to just embed AI for the sake of AI, but I'm sure there is a value add which it will bring to the whole ecosystem.
We actually had a number of product strategy meetings on this just recently, and we're approaching AI like we approach the word low code, in that low code is not a specific feature or capability. It is a product management philosophy. So it's the idea that AI is so broad and applicable in so many areas that you can't really look at it as individual pieces. It's just say, whenever I build product, I'm going to leverage AI in any aspect possible to allow my customer to have a better experience in a manner that's very similar to low code. Low code was a philosophy of, I'm going to design my design experience in the Appian product to make it as easy for customers to get value out of it as possible. So if we break down AI, we think about it, I'd say, in to overly broaden it, probably two general categories, decision-based AI and generative AI. So decision-based AI is how can I apply AI to ensure customers or the users of my system make smart decisions. And this allows AI to leverage AI to do very large analysis of data sets that's more difficult for humans to do and get prediction algorithms of what the likely best choice is. So you could use this in in an insurance process to determine a risk portfolio, and actuarians, of course, do this professionally in the insurance space. But AI is a great assistant there to help with decision making. From our perspective, in a low-code design tool, we develop a design studio, allowing people to say, what is the best, object to reuse in this design? Looking at the entire scope of all IT assets they've built, and then trying to predict what object they want to use. Areas of kind of where decision-based AI is helpful. The other aspect then is generative AI. So generative AI, we're seeing through the combination of large language models, amplifying the generation of just content in a number of forms. So certainly for us, the exploration of generative AI is, how can I just more easily understand the intent of a human and translate that into a machine application? So in this case, an Appian app. So in the previous paradigm of low code, it was a visual paradigm. How can I extract away object classes and syntax and languages to simple visual models, drag and drop? Now we're saying, well, now you have to teach you BPMN or some declarative language. I can just use natural language to express your intent and then have it automatically generate the application. So breaking down those barriers between human machine collaboration to generate applications faster. So that's how we think about it. Again, it is a transformative point right now in a technology perspective, because the accessibility of AI, both decisioning and generative AI, is now highly accessible, that you can incorporate it in every single aspect of whatever you want to do inside your business operation. So it has to kind of be a philosophy, and then you need to set up the technical infrastructure to make sure you're doing it right. So to have the large data set handling, and I think the biggest challenge everyone's going to be struggling with is the privacy of that data and how we're going to be working with data in the AI. Like, how do I train AI models that keep client data privacy in California protection or European GDPR protection? How do I give confidence that AI models were not abusing data when they were trained? So these are going to be very difficult decisions that are actually, we had Senate hearings just about 3 weeks ago on this same topic. And that's going to be probably one of the biggest challenges of setting up their right scalable architecture for incorporating AI as a philosophical approach.
All right. No, that's very interesting, Malcolm, because with that approach, I'm sure the speed of making applications is going to increase radically, and even some of the sort of error rate, so to say, will go down, and that will really speed it up. So one of the things I've always been sort of thinking, that the speed is the real essence of transformation. What we used to do 20 years back, we used to still increase the speed, but maybe it was from 20 to 15 days. But now everything needs to be real time, right? People really don't have patience to it. So let me go to Raghav. Raghav, what are you seeing from a future trends perspective on creating more scalable operations? And you heard Malcolm, you heard Rob's experience. So what are you seeing in the market, and where all of this will go from a trends perspective?
Sure, Sumit. And last week, I happened to be in Palo Alto. We attended an event which brought in roughly 4,500 entrepreneurs across the globe, across 22 industries. So one of the largest gathering for not just insurtechs, but fintechs, like startups across every single industry vertical. And I think the biggest conversation in the entire event was generative AI. And I think it is an understatement to say that generative AI is definitely having its iPhone moment, and like everyone is talking about that. So I won't bore this group with that level of detail, but I think having been in the insurance industry for a fairly longer period of time, and every time a new technology comes in, there is a hype, around the number of use cases and pilots and trials. I think I want to share some like 3 specific insights, which I think are very relevant for organizations as to what they should do as this generative AI hype is coming through. One is, I think, identification of suitable use cases. I think we've all learned through the automation evolution as it evolved from RPA to kind of analytics to now with AI and generative AI. I think if we start looking at use cases in a silo, the business case or the ROI will never be done. So it's very important for enterprises to start thinking of enterprise-wide use cases. And Malcolm, I really like what you said, that when you think of these use cases, you need to think of end-to-end processes and not think about the small point automations or point use of AI. You need to think of what is the improvement to the end-to-end process. So that's one. Second, I think as everyone's starting to think about large language models and their adaptability within the insurance domain, I think insurance carriers will actually benefit if they actually focus on step one, which is actually fixing the data. So I think as a data-led transformation provider, we focus this on a lot. Like AI essentially will rely on quality of data for its training and inference. And if data is not there, prepped up and cleaned, you will not be able to leverage it, right? So ensuring that the relevant data is first collected, organized, and prepared in a suitable format for these large language models to run is probably the first step that every carrier needs to be spending time on, rather than jumping towards the next large language model immediately. And last, and I think Rob, you touched on it, we at EXL have coined this term. I call it ROHAF, which stands for Reinforcement of Learning Through Human Feedback. We use this a lot. This is like the buzzword we use in EXL. But any AI-powered system can continuously learn from data and feedback and human decisions. Without that, all of this will not work. So it's very important. And again, everyone uses this differently, human in the loop or whatever. But ROHAF is the mantra that we are spending a lot of time on.
All right. No, that actually gets to the next question I had for Rob was really what's the balance between the human touch, the human brain versus where we can leverage AI. I was actually listening to a podcast in the morning and they were saying maybe it's AI in the loop. Human will still sort of be the forefront. AI is only enabling it. So maybe Rob, you could share your thoughts on how you think about it.
Yeah. I think the answer to your question is really that it's kind of a moving target. It will continue to evolve. If you guys remember a while back, we were perfectly content when we were driving sort of analog cars, and we would look at our dashboard, and all we saw were needles, and they weren't even digital needles; they're actual needles that would move and tell you what your speed was, and that was, speed and oil temperature was about all you would get, right? And everybody was happy. Nowadays, if your car doesn't have like an iPad in the middle of the dashboard, and you don't have 50 different gauges, and everything's connected to the internet, you're not happy. You need to upgrade your car. And so my point is that what is an okay balance between machine and man or person today will probably be different than what it will be 6 months or a year from now, because it's the hockey stick curve is so kind of vertical these days. We were very happy with basic RPA, sort of single technology solutions 3 years ago. Today, automation really needs to be a combination of multiple technologies and human-based feedback loops that we're implementing. I'm not sure what it will be a few years from now, but I can tell you it's going to be different. It'll continue to evolve. And to that end, I saw there was a question from the audience around what technology should they kind of learn to get into this industry. My quick answer to that is it really depends on, it's sort of company driven, because especially if you work for a large multinational like I do, oftentimes the technology stack is defined by other departments, like large IT departments that have global purchasing contracts with them. And so it's really sort of company dependent on what the tech stack that they've chosen is. In our case, we're sort of a Microsoft shop, so we do a lot of Azure, and Azure has its own AI track, and so we're getting our people trained on that. We use a lot of Python, so we've got our people trained on that. And as I said, we start with Lean, and so we work with different companies for the Lean training. We're also a Shingo shop, which is where we drive our culture, right? Shingo's based on the Toyota production system. So all of that, I think, will continue to evolve, and not only what tools are we using, but how pertinent those tools are, and in what combinations people will interact, I think will vary greatly over the next couple of years.
Yeah. No, that's perfectly. I think we are all living through many generation of technology, and I'm sure we will see many more. But I think what I have realized is what's the most important element is what customer experience we want to drive, and while driving that experience, what is the experience we are giving to our employees? Because if they get a good experience, they will give good experience to the customers. So when we start looking at any transformation we are trying to do from a customer lens, keeping the employee experience in mind, and then designing the process, leveraging the data. So for example, if a customer is really asking a query or a question, how soon we can respond. Now, you could have plethora of technology, processes, human in the loop or AI in the loop, but customer is really wanting that answer fast. In most cases, obviously, there can be areas where you will need time to get back to the customer. And that's where I would say the focus has to be, that we look at any customer journey, any process, end to end, use data to understand how fast we can move, what is the sort of areas of decision making or bottlenecks which we want to sort of look at reducing, and design it from a lens that it should be, I don't know whether we can create a process which is like going to sustain forever, but at least for the next 4 or 5 years is relevant enough for the customer. And then try to do it iteratively, because it is the clients I've worked with, nobody wants to wait for a transformation project to go on for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. People want 3-month cycle at the max to get something which is usable, is changing the experience, is changing the business outcomes. But obviously the ROI will always govern what gets prioritized in most enterprises. And AI or Appian, I think technology has to be used as enablers, because your end goal is to transform sort of that experience. And that will always be the most important element. I think your answer to the question on what technology to sort of learn, I was almost thinking, Rob, that I don't know, because you have to be very, very open on getting to your basics of technology, but you have to keep learning. This is an evolving landscape. You have to always constantly keep yourself updated. Today, there is generative AI. We all know Apple sort of introduced Vision Pro that will probably have something different next year. So things are going to rapidly evolve. I think we all have to really be up our learning game, because I think that will make us relevant in this whole automation space. So with that, let me take to thank all the panelists, because I think we got very different perspectives, from product strategy to operational experience to how we are helping many clients across insurance and other industries. But we have a little bit of time if we want to have any questions, which from Q&A we can take if they are in the chat, or people can put their questions on the chat.
Sumit, I think there's an important question that came up on the chat, and I want to spend just 30 seconds on it because
sure.
I think this question is coming up in every single client conversation, which is how do I address the security concerns in this era of generative AI or hyper automation? And I think the best answer we can give, I like what Rob said, this is a moving target, so you got to learn every day. But I think there are three clear things that we are noticing. First is you don't want to have the model. If you are investing in a large language model, you don't want the model running on someone else's platform. So suggestion is to run it on prem. That's point one. Second is you will notice as a output, a lot of these models hallucinate. And that is real. There is no way you will find a large language model which will not hallucinate. And the only way to deal with that is ROHF, right? Like human in the loop is the only way to deal with that. And last is, especially with large language models, we are noticing what is called as prompt injection. Because large language models work on prompts, they can be programmed or engineered to ignore the previous set of instructions. So somebody could actually break into the system and prompt it to completely ignore all previous instructions, which is why it's important to create very specific instructions on how much users can actually modulate the large language model. So these are the three big ticket items we are noticing in terms of how could you address data privacy concerns.
All right. I think those were the couple of questions I think we picked up. One was on what technologies and the data privacy, which I'm sure will be most talked about. I don't see any other questions. If not, then I think I will want to thank the people who sort of logged in. This is an evolving space, and I'm sure we will be back with some of our more experiences as we sort of move forward in this journey. This is a journey, and we will all strive to do best for our customers and clients as we sort of move forward. So let me thank everyone. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.